just a bad joke. Valenti paused and frowned like a mime feigning thought. When the Gestapo came to Picasso's studio during the occupation, there was a photo of Guernica lying around. They asked him, "Did you do this?" And he said, "No, you did." Jack looked at him. "Is that true?" Valenti shrugged. "I don't know." That's what they're saying. Picasso said, "Art is a lie that makes us see the truth." Jack didn't respond, and Valenti closed his eyes. In the distance, the sunlight caught a window on the tool shed and burned a liquid, blinding gold. "There's a water tower in Rock Basin," Valenti said, "just like in Trevi." His eyes were still closed as he spoke. "For years, Rope Man and I talked about climbing up one night and painting it." "Rope Man," Jack said. "Friend from high school." Valenti opened his eyes. "We called him Rope Man because no one could pronounce his last name." "What's Rope Man up to now?" "He's dead." Valenti's voice was flat, and he stared straight ahead at the chicken coop buried in honeysuckle. "What happened?" For a second, Jack thought he saw a savage fire in Valenti's eyes. "When Van Gogh's cousin wouldn't marry him, he put his hand in a lamp flame," Valenti said. "The family wouldn't let him see her, and he said, 'Let me see her for as long as I can keep my hand in the flame.' I guess it was something like that with Rope Man." "What does that mean?" Valenti picked at the grass. Nobody noticed he was burning up. "And what happened with Van Gogh?" "They blew out the lamp," Valenti said. The sun had gone mostly behind the hill. A single ray wavered above the ridge like a filament of glass. Van Gogh didn't kill himself, you know. Everyone thinks he did, but it was some teenagers that liked to prank him. They shot him, probably by accident. I never heard that. Look it up. Jack closed his eyes. A faint residue of red or orange seeped through his eyelids. "Tell me more about Van Gogh," he said. And Valenti spoke of wheat fields and flowers and crows and turbulent skies, of painting loneliness and sorrow and anguish, of moments when the veil of time and of inevitability seems to open for the blink of an eye, of boats in storms and boats pulling other boats, towing them, tugging them, and how one boat sometimes pulls another, while that second helpless boat prepares to reverse roles someday and pull the first boat through a storm or a time of special need. Valenti described an impossible person, a scoundrel, a tramp, difficult and gruff, prone to fighting, taking up with prostitutes, rejected by everyone, repulsive even to his parents, unlovable, homeless, driven by inexpressible love, or love that was expressible only in a particular form that did not allow it to be shared between two people and that was therefore cursed, a love that was refused while he was alive, and only when this cretin, this parasite, offensive to every standard of good taste, was gone, did everyone see how much they did want his peculiar, displaced, and overripe love. And the same respectable people who had found him so revolting now clutched him to their breast with the fiercest longing, because a certain intensity of color reminded them, or so Valenti said in his own way, of intimations of such intensity in moments of their own that they had forgotten or suppressed. Jack had intended to get past the hollow, but he found that he couldn't. At night he felt the eerie, mystical nearness of it. He started to orient himself in the house and on the property in relation to the hollow. Inspecting the walls, he found no crack or crease. The paint and plaster ran flawlessly to the corners, the ceiling, the baseboards. There was no easy way in. Spring break ended, and Valenti returned to coaching. Jack did not miss seeing him, but not seeing anyone presented its own problem, namely what to do with himself. He felt a great restlessness growing inside him, something vast and formless, and he lay in the sunlit grass on the hill, watching the leaves migrate in the breeze. When Valenti came over one Friday evening, his long hair hung in greasy locks and his face was patched with dirt. "We had a match today," he explained, and took the beer Jack offered. "I thought you were the coach," Jack said. Valenti drank deeply. "Yeah, but when we win, I let the girls tackle me." He coughed to clear his throat. "Blood in, blood out, you know, like the military." "Blood in, blood out? How many girls tackle you?" "I don't know. 15? You should see me," Valenti said. "I'm like Gulliver." A silence fell, and they briefly regarded the birds streaking through the backlit trees. Jack coughed lightly in his fist. "So, what should we do about this hollow?" "Hollow?" "The chamber in the wall." Valenti seemed not to understand. "Oh, that," he said after a minute. "Who cares about that?" "Who cares?" Jack thought. "You were the one who brought it up." "Here's what you do. Drill a hole in the wall and run a fiber optic spy camera through it." "I don't have a fiber optic spy camera," Jack said. "Yeah," Valenti nodded. "Too bad." In the creek at their feet, tiny fish idled and darted in the current. Valenti finished his beer, crushing the can between his strong, heavy hands, and grinned. Jack grinned back. "Hey, why did you get kicked out of school?" he asked. Until that moment, Jack had felt indifferent to this question, or worse than indifferent, he felt the answer would disappoint him. But a sudden annoyance at Valenti had overcome him, a sense of some insuperable grossness in Valenti's character that would never, even with boundless fellowship and care, settle into sufficient self-awareness. The former football player kicked at tufts of moss. He smiled without turning, as if at the little swimming fish. "I wasn't, kicked out," he said. "You weren't?" "I could have come back." Valenti gazed at the trees. "Didn't want to." "Why was that?" Valenti squinted inquisitively as the leaves above shook like silver-green sequins. "I was doing so much acid that summer," he said after a minute. "Summer after they told me to take a year off. I don't remember why, but I had keys to George Deal's apartment. You remember Deal? I never liked that kid, but he was always down to get high. Well, George was away for some reason, and I'd been tripping all night. I couldn't come down. I remember it was sunrise when I got to his place, and I lay down in his bed, but I couldn't sleep. So I started pacing from room to room for like hours. And there were just 4 rooms, but I couldn't stop. I was getting spooked, so I decided to watch something. George had this projector hooked up to a DVD player, but I couldn't find any DVDs, so I just pressed play to see what was in there. And all of a sudden there were these people dancing and singing, tons of them, in matching costumes, doing elaborate routines. They made shapes like flowers, geometric shapes, all this stuff. At first I thought, this is cool. But then I started to get a bad feeling. They were like aliens. Like they were on a different planet, dancing in outer space, somewhere you could never get to, you know? And then I thought, no, I was wrong. It was our world, the dancing planet, and I was the one who couldn't get there. Jack stared at him. What the fuck are you talking about? What? I asked why you didn't go back to school. Oh, yeah. Shit. Valenti laughed. I guess that's when I knew I'd never go back. I was covered in dust. Jack shook his head. Dust? Valenti nodded. So Picasso said, art washes the dust of the everyday from the soul. You get it? A splitting pressure had arisen in Jack's head. Dude, you gotta get off this Picasso and Van Gogh thing. What do you mean? No one's ever gonna take you seriously going on about Picasso and Van Gogh and wildflowers and shit, Jack said. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Find some obscure artist to talk about. Or better yet, shut up. Don't say anything. Christ! He burst out. You have to show people you can play the game. What game? Jack massaged his forehead with his hands. Don't be obtuse. But they're the best, Valenti said quietly. And you know, Jack continued without really hearing him, it's not like because some artist was poor or misunderstood, and you're poor and misunderstood, things are going to work out for you. Millions of people fail. Millions for every Picasso. It's not like failing means you're the next Van Gogh. I don't think that, Valenti said. Good. Baby steps towards sanity. But don't think the people who succeed don't play the game. They all do. Picasso did. They danced the goddamn dance. Jack shut up. Valenti looked so dirty and bedraggled, leaves and twigs feathered in his hair, and something fierce and sad in his look. Jack could only say more softly, look, Kimosabe, tell me, where does it go from here? Valenti didn't respond. That haunted, confused kid they once called Picasso, as if in affection, with no affection, walked off. After maybe 10 paces, he stopped as if about to turn, but then continued on to his car. Jack watched him go. The ignition sounded, and from the open window of his Toyota, Valenti shouted, "You're covered in dust." "So what?" Jack said. "You covered me in your dust." Valenti yelled at him, putting the car in gear and lurching forward. "I didn't do it," Jack shouted back. "It was those fucking rugby girls." But Valenti was already speeding down the drive. "We've got a hollow," Jack told Sophie on the phone. "Am I supposed to know what that means?" "Between the walls, there's an empty space." She spoke with a certain circumspection. "Isn't that normal?" "Not like this. It's a big hollow. Not as big as a room, maybe, but close." A longer pause accreted on the line. "Jack, what's this about?" "It's your house too," he said. "I thought you'd like to know there's an unexplained cavity in the wall." "Is everything all right? Besides the unexplained cavity in the wall?" Yeah, everything's awesome." "You sound, I don't know, is everything really all right?" Jack soothed his hot cheeks and brow against the cool wood of the doorframe. He no longer knew what he meant to say. The scope of something inexpressible, a mammoth, ungraspable intimation, had overtaken him. Jack called Valenti to apologize. He'd heard nothing from him in a week. To his surprise, Valenti's mother answered the phone. "Jonah's in the hospital," she said. "He's all right, don't worry, but he's not supposed to see anyone yet." "What happened?" There was a pause. How do you know Jonah? Jack told her they were old college friends and that he'd recently moved to the area. Maybe Jonah would like to tell you himself when he's feeling better, his mother said. Jack pondered this briefly, but soon turned his attention to other things. A week later, unexpectedly, he received a letter from Valenti in the mail. It was written on brown cardstock in a large, handsome hand. Hey, Jack. First off, don't feel bad when you hear what happened or like you owe me an apology or whatever. We argued, so what? I don't take it personally. But don't add this to your list of reasons I'm crazy. I'm not that crazy. Just a little crazier than you. Or maybe not. I never told you this, but sometimes I get pretty low. Van Gogh's last words were La tristesse durera toujours, which in French means the sadness shall last forever. But he died with a smile on his face, they say, and sometimes I think about that and think life isn't so bad. You're right. I talk about Van Gogh and Picasso a lot. What can I say? They're my heroes, and it gives me comfort to keep them close. It isn't cool, but I guess I'm not cool. When I try to be, I feel like I'm suffocating, you know? I told myself I'll just say what's on my mind and people can think what they want. Dumb, huh? I don't think I'll ever learn to play the game you were talking about, but maybe that's okay too, do you think? The doctors say my main issue is a lack of proportion. Well, I can't argue with that. I get strange notions, and it's like I can't resist. After our argument, I was thinking about Ropeman, and I got it in my head I was going to climb the water tower and paint it like Ropeman and I always talked about. I guess I was pretty drunk. Everyone says I'm lucky it didn't hurt myself worse. One more Van Gogh story, if you won't chop my head off for telling it. I don't have my books here, so it's from memory. In a letter to Theo, Van Gogh says he knows he's a non-entity, a bum, basically, in the eyes of the world. And despite that, he says he'd like to show in his work what's in the heart of such a nobody. I think that's pretty cool. The rugby girls came to see me the other day, 6 or 7 of them. They're crazy, those girls. They brought me brownies they baked. I wish I'd known they were pot brownies before I ate some. But it cheered me up to see the girls. Hey, don't worry about me. In no time at all, I'll be back out there painting with birthday candles burning in my hat. Your bro, Jonah. It was 2 years before Jack saw Valenti again. On the day in question, he and Sophie were across the river, poking around in antique shops and cafes while their infant daughter napped in her papoose. In a town just north of Rock Basin, Jack found Valenti at a craft fair working one of the stalls. All around him were small, garish canvases showing still lives and cottages and bright flowering bushes. Jack Francis, Valenti bellowed when Jack approached. Hi, Jonah. Sophie was in a different part of the fair, looking at jewellery or retailored vintage dresses. What's cracking? Valenti appeared genuinely pleased to see him. Jack, at least, read no trace of their last encounter or the intervening years in his look, just that restive quality, as if every instant teetered on an uneasy precipice. Nothing, Jack said, just driving around. I'm here with Sophie and a little human that popped out of her. Valenti grinned. Sophie finally made her choice. Yeah, I guess. Jack had forgotten his old joke. Are these yours? He said, and pointed to the paintings. These. Valenti's face went blank, and a sudden humorless fire appeared on it. The shift was so precipitate that Jack wondered for a second whether he had, in fact, said something different and unforgivable. What? Jack asked. Valenti threw his head back and laughed. Man, you must really think I suck at painting. This shit? He cast a hand about. I'm just doing my friend Raj a favor. I wouldn't be caught dead painting this bullshit. I see, Jack said, not entirely sure that he did. How's your stuff going? Valenti shrugged. I'm not in the Louvre yet. No. Jack picked up and put down a canvas that seems to show a strangely colored child, or doll, or possibly a clown. Valenti was asking him a question. It took Jack a moment to realize that he was asking about the hollow. What had happened with it? Hollow, Jack repeated. The word triggered something in him, a sense of déjà vu, but he couldn't quite catch the recollection. He hadn't thought about the hollow in months, years. It seemed much longer ago than it could have been that Valenti had brought it to his attention, a memory far more deeply buried in the past than the facts allowed. He stared at Valenti impassively, although some slight mirth may have danced in his eyes. What hollow? Valenti narrowed his eyes, trying to assess what was taking place. He held Jack's gaze, then he smiled. A snort erupted from him, a laugh, and then Jack was laughing too. They laughed with a gathering force, truly cracking up. What's so funny? Sophie was tapping Jack on the shoulder. What are you laughing at? Jack turned, grinning, and was about to shrug when Valenti cut in and in his loud, abrupt voice answered, sadness. Their laughter petered out. Jack studied the thinning, wrinkled skin around Valenti's eyes, waiting for something to happen. Valenti was smiling broadly, entirely in earnest. It was the earnestness of a large, clumsy person crashing through a world of glass doors and gossamer screens. Jack realized that he was waiting for Sophie to suggest she had misheard, but she said nothing, only pursed her lips. He breathed quietly. The day was crystalline, blue, touched by clouds, cool, a light breeze. The market hummed, a burble of chatter, dogs' barks, the smell of cut flowers, of burning, colours, crushed leaves, exhaust, a chime tinkling, a yellow shawl, time pooling, opening, a moment before anyone spoke.